Hey guys, in this video we're going to go over some of the rules and etiquette of playing over-the-board chess. For a lot of players, you're looking to play your first over-the-board tournament, and it can feel intimidating figuring out what are the different rules, what are the different etiquette, what things do you need to know. So the first thing you need to know when looking for a tournament is how to read the tournament format. So you might see something like 4SSG-60 D5. What does that mean? You can Google USCF tournament codes, and you'll find like 4SS means 4 round Swiss, G-60 means you get 60 minutes to start the game, D5 for example means a 5-second delay. If you see an INC or a plus, that means an increment. So once you read a couple of these, it'll be a lot more straightforward. That's the first thing you need to know. And then let's start with the rules of over-the-board chess. So usually tournaments will have boards provided for you, but if it's a local club or some of the events in the US, you may need to bring your own sets. So typically, if players bring their own sets, the player who plays the black pieces gets to determine which set to use, as long as it follows tournament regulations, and also which clock to use. So keep that in mind. In general, black gets to pick the set and the clock. The next thing you'll need is a score sheet, which looks like this. And oftentimes the score sheets are provided at the tournaments, but you can also purchase your own scorebook. And to use the scorebook, one column is for white, and the next column is for black. So you put your first move under white 1, the next move under black 1, white 2, black 2, and so on. And the notation is the same as you see online. And the next part you'll need to know is how do you start the clock. Almost all clocks now are digital, and usually to start the clock, you push the button so that it's up on white's side, and then there's usually a start-stop button. So on this clock it's a play button. Some clocks there's a switch where you can go from play to pause, but that's usually how you do it. Press the button as if it's already white's turn, hit the play button. Now, once the clock is going, one side is going to make their move and then press the clock. One thing that you need to know, and this is something that a lot of new players have no clue about, the hand that moves your piece is the same hand that needs to press the clock. So you're not allowed to do this, because what can happen is you can be pressing the clock faster than you're moving the piece. So that's why the same hand that moves the piece also needs to be the hand that hits the clock. The next thing we'll go over is touch move. So in online play, you can grab a piece, you can move it around, you can put it back, you can grab a new piece, you can move it. That can work in casual play over the board, but in tournament chess, it's touch move. So if you touch a piece, you have to move that piece as long as you have at least one legal move. And you can pick up the piece, set it back down, and move it later after you're thinking about it. But once a piece is completely let go of, once you release a piece, that locks in your move. So it's touch move, and when you release the piece, that locks in your move. Now, when your opponent releases their piece, if they forget to hit the clock, there's two things you can do. One, you could just wait it out and let them burn time on their clock. The second thing you can do is you can point out to them, you forgot to hit your clock. But really you don't want to make your move when the opponent's clock is still ticking. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Next we'll go over an illegal move. So let's say you have a position where your opponent walks in to check. What you need to do is stop the clock and get the tournament director and let them know that there was an illegal move. In USCF, usually it would be a 2-minute penalty, and then your opponent will have to still move the piece they touched as long as there's a legal move after that. So when in doubt, always ask the tournament director. That's going to be the best thing to do. They can help you out. The next thing we'll go over is how to offer a draw in chess. So to offer a draw, what you need to do is make your move first, and then you say to your opponent, would you like a draw? Then you press the clock. So the order is make your move, would you like a draw? Press the clock. Now they have their whole move to think about it. They don't have to answer right away. They could say, I'll think about it. They could answer right away, or they could say nothing. And even if you walk away, they have until they make their move and reply to answer the draw request. So keep that in mind. They have that whole move to think about it. You are not supposed to offer a draw prior to making your move. So I can't see your move, offer a draw, without making my move first and locking that in. So that's the way it works. You have to make your own move, offer the draw, and then hit the clock. The next thing we'll go over is how to get the TD. Usually you want to get the TD on your own time. So if it's your move, so usually you want to get the TD on your opponent's clock. So that's when you can walk around. But if you're low on time, you can pause the clock to get the tournament director and let your opponent know we're going to get the TD. So then the last thing we'll go over is how to resign. There's a couple ways to do this. You could tip your king, that's fine. You could just extend your hand and say, I resign. That's another one. Or you could just extend your hand and say, well played. You just want to make sure that it's clear you're not offering a draw. Usually I say, I resign, extend my hand, or if there's players nearby and I don't want to say anything, to be quiet, I may just tip my king, do the handshake. Alright, so now let's go over some general etiquette. That's kind of the main rules that you need to know. Let's talk about etiquette for a bit. So when you first arrive to the game, it's common to shake hands before you start. Some players prefer a fist bump or maybe an elbow bump, but handshake is common. Usually you say good luck to start the game or good chess. Some players don't like hearing good luck, but you can just shake hands and you don't have to say anything. While you're playing, you really want to be quiet with only a few exceptions. So you don't want to joke about things during the game. You don't want to be talking to the player next to you. You really want the atmosphere to be quiet and everyone's focused on their own games. So each tournament has rules on, for example, bringing in cell phones or CD players or MP3 players, whatever, wearing headphones. Most events will say no electronics can be on at all. So you can't have your cell phone sitting here vibrating, lighting up. You definitely shouldn't be looking at a phone while you play, nothing like that. When it comes to food and drinks, this is something that even experienced players get wrong in my opinion when it comes to etiquette. Really, you shouldn't be eating at the table. There's so many reasons you shouldn't be eating at the table. Some players do it, like maybe their last round went till the very last minute and they immediately have to play again. But even then, you should probably just tell your opponent you'll be 5 minutes late. Let them start your clock even and eat quick. But if you're eating at the table, not only is it noisy, it's distracting, it might smell, it might get the pieces greasy. There's so many reasons you shouldn't be eating at the table. And if your opponent's eating at the table, you have every right to let them know that that's distracting. And please eat away from the board. And if they don't listen, you can always go to the tournament director and usually they will enforce the rule that something is too distracting. Drinks are generally allowed at the board though, so you can have water, soda, juice, whatever. That's perfectly fine. When there are other distractions, so for example, someone's watching the game and is talking, you can actually just get the tournament director, let them know, and they will enforce it. So really the tournament director is going to be your friend. You can always politely ask yourself first, though. That's fine. So let's talk about now what you can do on each move. So when it's your opponent's move, this is when you're allowed to get up and walk around. So you can go take a breather, go get a drink, go to the restroom, etc. So that's your freedom to move around. You really don't want to be standing up at the board and just hovering over it, or walking behind your opponent and breathing down their neck. But you are allowed to walk around and look at other games. When it's your own move, this is when you can do other things. Like you could go ask the TD a question on your move, let your opponent know. You can adjust a piece, so this is an important one. If there's a piece that just is not quite sitting on the square right, or if there's like some crumbs or something on the board and you want to get them off, you may be afraid that you're going to touch a piece and have the touch move rule in play. You are allowed to say adjust or jadoob and then move the piece onto the square. You should only do that on your own move though. You don't want to be adjusting pieces when it's your opponent's move. That will distract them. So on your own move, you can ask to see notation, you can adjust pieces, you can ask the tournament director a question. On the opponent's move, you can walk around, go to the restroom, also ask the TD questions. Now this one kind of goes without saying, but you really shouldn't be talking to any other players at all in the tournament hall. So if you're talking in the tournament hall, even if it's at a whisper, chances are other players can hear that you are talking, even though they might not be able to hear what you're saying. And you should never talk about games in progress while you're playing. If you want to talk to someone else, usually you're allowed to outside of the playing hall, but again, you shouldn't be talking about the game in progress. The next thing we'll go over is a difference between online play and over-the-board play. And this is the etiquette of making your moves. So after your opponent moves and hits the clock, you don't want to immediately blitz out a move and hit the clock back. You also don't want to make your move while the opponent's hand is still going to press the button. So in general, this is how the process should work. When your opponent makes a move, they hit their clock, both sides write down that move. So it's not a race to see who can make the move the quickest and then write it down later. Your opponent makes the move, hits the clock, you write down their move, put your pen down, get your move ready, and then you move, hit your clock, and write that down. So there's no pre-moving. You should never be moving before your opponent hits the clock. I've had that happen to me before, and I've actually had to tell my opponent, hey, you need to wait for me to hit the clock before you touch any pieces. It's very rude to do that. So no pre-moving, write down your moves first. When it comes to writing down your own move though, usually you want to do that after you move. So some players write down their move that they're thinking of, but there's been some changes on the rules back and forth on that. It's usually best etiquette to not write down your own move until after you play it. And then the last thing is when the game ends, usually you want to extend your hand, do a handshake, say good game, well played, nice game, or you can say nothing at all. Like sometimes if you win and maybe your opponent's upset, I'll tend to not say anything. I'll just shake hands with them. And really you never want to be a poor sport. You watch some grandmasters play and they just look disgusted after a game, just storm off from the table. That's really not what you want to do. You're there to learn, you're there to have fun. It's just a game. You don't want to be a poor sport. And the last thing you can do is after a game, so we talk about chess improvement a lot at ChessGoals and takeaways. After the game, ask your opponent if they want to analyze the game with you. That's really one of the best ways to learn from a game. Talk through what you were thinking, hear what your opponent's thinking, work through that whole process. It's really a great way to improve. So that's the last tip. If you have any other questions about over-the-board chess, put them in the comments below. I'll go through and answer everything. I'm sure there's things we're missing, but hopefully we covered a majority of the questions. And remember, chess is a game for fun. It really isn't that intimidating. Everyone's played their first tournament at some point. It's not that big of a deal. and really just default to being polite and courteous, and don't be noisy or disrespectful. Chess is a very serious game when you get into the tournament setting, but really it shouldn't be intimidating. Alright, so if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Put your questions in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.